Good afternoon, everybody. I join you once again in the garage for the fourth episode in a row where we work on this. Actually, not in a row. The working on this episodes have been scattered in between everything else, but fourth episode in a row in this series where the boat is still inside, and I hope this is the last episode where that's the case. I really want to get this thing on the water in the beginning of the next episode or the end of this one. Not sure yet. Anyway, if you're just joining us, this is a 7-foot long Jetstream Adventure Boats kit that I bought and welded it all together this winter. And I'm in the process of dropping a 701cc twin cylinder 2-stroke Yamaha jet ski engine in it with a custom built intake to the pump. And yeah, a lot of learnings going on in this build, but we are having fun and we're getting close. So in the last episode, we built the muffler brackets, mounted the engine, I think, battery mount. We built a custom fuel cell, which is over here on the floor. And last but not least, we put on the UHMW on the bottom. So now we're all set up to go ahead and start dropping parts in for the final time. So I am waiting on some custom bolts to hold the pump in. Then the pump, or the intake, can go in for the last time. We can assemble the pump out the rest of the way, drop our motor in, and all that jazz. So we're waiting on some bolts there. So while we're doing that, we still have a lot of work to do in the controls department. Actually, we have all the work to do in the controls department. So let's go look at the husk of our original jet ski that we're using as our donor and see if there's anything useful in there or if we're going to custom order all our cables, which is going to get expensive if we do. So back here tucked away behind the shed, we have the husk of our Yamaha Wave Raider 701. We picked this thing up for $200 out of central Iowa, where a guy had used it as a bumper boat with his buddy and poked a hole in the hull. Made it a perfect donor for us. We stole the engine and the pump out of this little fella, and hopefully we can steal a bunch more. Still has all of its steering stuff, which I'm hoping is long enough for us to use. So let's go ahead and check that out. All right, we harvested a phenomenal amount of stuff. I think I just saved myself probably $300 at least. So we got our trim and steering cables out here. That's our red and blue. We got the little sealing washers off the back. Probably replace at least the gaskets in those, but that's one problem solved. We stole the choke cable. We grabbed our little steering nozzle thing. I need to order a new one of these. I broke it, taking it apart. Some cable sheathing, our trim plate, the throttle cable. The only thing I got left, I just remembered, is our wiring harness for the ignition, which we won't use this, but I will definitely keep it for reference. We'll need a start button, an emergency stop, and a regular stop button. So yeah, I'm pumped. I love saving money pulling parts, I guess. So now that we have all of our cables, which are strewn about my driveway, it's time to figure out our steering column. So we have this old janky wheel, which I think will work. I had to do some modification here to get our original thumb throttle on. So we have that all figured out, but to figure out where I wanted my steering wheel, I needed to figure out my seating position. And to do that, I had to buy some seats. So these are fresh off Amazon. I think these were the scratch and dents for like $110. I found out if you look for real jet boat seats, they quickly become like $800, and I'm not doing that. So the $115 or whatever I spent on the two of these for bass boat seats should work just fine. So now that we have those set in place, we drilled them into the seat pan with just 4 stainless bolts, no big deal. And now we need to get our steering column tacked up into its spot. All right, so when I went to go tack my steering column together, I realized I was out of my big spool of wire. Couldn't find another one, so I had to buy a 1-pound spool. But this has the arbor that I need. This little guy doesn't. So I rigged up this super sketchy operation in the lathe here to spool this 1 pound of wire on there. It's working actually remarkably well. I don't know what I'm going to do when I get to the end of this, so I'm going to put the camera down because that's going to come up soon. Oh, it went perfect. I clicked the lathe off and it ran it down just the last little piece I needed. And then it somehow got caught here. Didn't make a big mess, but that's how you spool 1 pound of wire onto a 13-pound spool, so you can run it through your XRA. All right, so with our wire on our big spool, we're now ready to tack some stuff up. Let's start with this steering column brace piece. Well, I forgot to hit play, but we got this piece mounted all the way on there. Hopefully it's enough steering travel before that lever down here hits the top. We'll see. All right, we made it in here to test it out. I had to grab a cinder block, and even then I'm extremely scared because this thing's sitting on jack stands and it's a V, so it wants to do this, but we got it chocked up. But anyway, you can see we made the steering wheel too low. It's actually really comfortable, but it's my big fat leg here. It's not going to work long term. So we're going to cut those two bottom tacks and then twist it up. Get it a little higher, maybe like right here. All right, got it tacked up. Madeline also threw up the windshield for me here so I could see. And it looks like I do plan to put Lexan in it, which we'll probably put on the inside. So that would be like there. So it'll be tight. But again, I don't know how much steering play we'll actually have. I don't know. Not much. If you think about a handlebar on a jet ski, you don't steer it a whole lot. And worst case, I slide the windshield forward. So I think this should work. All right, so we got our column all attacherized. I think we'll end up doing some triangle gussets from there to there. Not the coolest looking column by any means. And it's still, I mean, it's tough, but this is not. So I think we're gonna take a piece of 1x1, wherever the hell I put it. Yeah, I did leave it up in there. We're gonna do something like that. Hopefully, so then it's out of the way of my feet, but still braces that up. Because I don't want this piece to crack. So that's the idea there. Do a little bit of hidden fabrication. And we should be good for the steering mount. All right, I got that post tacked in there. We're just gonna leave it tacked for now. For now, we're gonna go ahead and cut out some gusset doodads with some style to them for our steering column support, and then we need to move into cable mounting. Let's go ahead and buzz these out and tack them on. Ow. All right, I got all the steering column brace welded in, and now to try and crawl underneath and get the cable hooked up, I decided it should probably come down off the stands. So I've conned Madeline into helping me for the, how many times do you think we've moved this?
A lot.
At least 5 to 10 times we've picked this on and off the stands. And now it's a little heavier with the seats, so let's see how this goes. So with the boat on the ground, I could crawl up underneath the dashboard and figure out how to mount up our steering and do a little bit of overhead welding. Wasn't bad, except for all the blood rushing to my forehead. All right, so now that we have the steering column set up with our cable running to the back, we need a spot for this cable to go through the back so we can control this nozzle. So I put this gigantic hole in the back of the boat. Now that should give us plenty of clearance for this. It'll be a little tough to seal up, or we overshot the hole size a little bit. Just kidding. So I didn't have room to poke the cable through like on this flat portion because of how my intake's set up. So I came up with an idea to make this guy, because I want my cable to poke through in a flat area. So that'll give us a nice flat surface for the cable to protrude from the back of the boat. So we'll weld this in over that hole. I just cut that hole so that we'd have room to get like a wrench in there and tighten this up and all that. Make life a little easier. So that should work out pretty sweet. So with our pass-through figured out, we got to welding it onto the transom, and it fought me a little bit because the tubing thickness is pretty thin. I was having a hard time not burning through, so we had to stack tacks a little bit. All right, got our pass-through all welded up. Should work out pretty good. Probably have to adjust it a little shorter as we're further forward than original, I would guess. So we'll have to throw some little steering adjustment in there, but works pretty good. Welded that pretty decently. I actually welded it first with the push-pull gun and then went back with the TIG and cleaned it up. Wasn't looking the best. That piping's pretty thin, but passes through nicely in there. Be a little hard to get a wrench on it, but not impossible. And then we just run it all the way up. You can't even see because it's up under the rail to our steering wheel. So next, now that we have the intake all bolted in here, I double checked all of our bolt holes work. It fits up to the back and the pump and everything works. So I think we're finally going to seal the intake in there, which is kind of a daunting task, and it's going to take 2 people because I got to lie on the ground and push the bolts up, and I have to get someone to put all the nuts on for me. So, all right, it's been a few hours, but I found a helper to help me bolt this all in. Before we bolt it in, though, we need to make a seal. We're going to use a Sikaflex 291 marine adhesive to do that. We're going to do the bottom flange there, that flange, and the outside. And it's all kind of got to go together at once, and we only have an hour cure time. So definitely something you want some help with. And I usually like to do everything alone, so I don't know, one of those things you can't. So I'm going to set you guys up on the tripod and set up a time lapse, and we'll go ahead and start throwing the bolts in there, and hopefully this goes well. I'll be honest, this was probably my absolute least favorite part of the project in total. The having to rush while jamming the bolts into it and trying to get 3 different planes lined up at once and the pump bolted on and everything. Just not a lot of fun. And some of the bolts I put in pretty tough spots, and there's really no way to go about it. And just through bolting stuff is never really that fun. So definitely some design changes I would have made. I would have tried to do some sort of retained nut on the intake, and maybe I'll do that in the future if I have to pull this out again. Golly, what a mess. Looks like you left a toddler alone with a bunch of white out, but we got it in. So the intake back here, I'm pretty confident that's going to seal up because that's actually like an internal flange, not flange to flange, but like mating surface to mating surface fit. So that should be good. It's down here that I'm worried about. Now, as you can see, we properly gooped it up, and I also gooped up each bolt because I forgot to order sealing washers. And what a pain in the neck. I hope I don't have to do that again anytime soon. Knock on wood. But it's sealed. It just looks like a mess. Hopefully I can get some of that off of there because it's so bad. I'll see you guys in the morning. Now that I pretty much have the engine ready to go in on the boat side of things, we gotta make the engine ready. So one of the things that needs to be done on this engine before we drop it in the boat is I'm going to do away with the automatic oil fuel mixing system. I don't have room for a separate oil tank, nor do I want to deal with the hassle. I will just mix my own gas. Also, you can't always trust these systems. They're just another thing to break, and when these break, they kill your engine. So it should be as simple as popping this guy off and then building a little block off plate. Bingo. That should block off our little pump hole, whatever you want to call it. So we're good to go. All right, so once we got our block off plate done, I pulled the carburetors off to clean them in my new ultrasonic cleaner. Thanks, Mom. And I promptly broke a piece, so now I'm waiting for a new piece in the mail. So moving forward, I actually pulled the exhaust all the way off, rechecked all of our manifold bolts. I was actually missing one, so I had ordered that before. Got that all good. Now I think I'm ready to drop the engine in. It's really cruddy and dirty, but all of our electronics are still on it, so I'm really wary of power washing it, especially with the carburetors off. So we might just live with a dirty engine. Maybe we'll blow it off at least. But I'm going to go ahead and clean it up maybe a little bit, and then we'll get it, throw my back out to sling it up into the boat and see if we can fit it with the bulkhead in place. Well, I ran into a few issues when I dropped the engine in. I had to pull the bread box off so it could kind of squeeze in here with the bulkhead in place. But you'll see our coupler down here, sorry it's dark, it is not meshed up correctly. Our engine is sitting too high all of a sudden. So I actually undid the rear mount, slid them out of the way. That was enough to get the engine mounted up, but there's no way I can get the mounts in there even. So I guess maybe when we bolted down the intake and everything, it sat lower than when it was just sitting there. I don't know what changed. But nonetheless, that's not going to work. So we need to drop the engine down, which we have room to do. We just need to lower our engine mounts, which means we need to do some milling. And I have a milling machine, this little ancient Harbor Freight mill, but you can't put a collet in it. The belts are trashed, like really trashed. I might try and, I've been meaning to get a belt for it for a while, but even with a fresh belt, I don't think this thing's gonna mill very well. So I might just have to find an actual machine shop. So since I want to get this boat done, we're gonna pivot. We'll deal with that tomorrow, figure out how we're gonna move on. I'm gonna go ahead and weld up our bulkhead because we now know we can get the engine in and out with that here, and probably tack the windshield on, kind of figure out where we want that so I can stare at it for a few days and see before I fully weld it up. Alrighty, so it's the next morning and I figured out the solution to our problem. So that is a freshly faced down little engine mounting block. It's an original one for scale, so we took a little bit off so far. I'm not really quite sure how far I want to go, but I went and got new belts for this thing, or a new belt. We got the speed adjusted up to where we should be for a 3/8 4-flute end mill, and it's actually doing really good. Now, this is a blasphemous operation because we've got a end mill tucked into a chuck, which is not correct by any means, but there's no good way to put a collet in this thing unless anyone knows. This is a Central Machinery. This is just an old Harbor Freight item 42976 mill drill machine, more of a drill than a mill. Yeah, but if anyone knows how to tuck a collet up into this thing, I would love to know. There's a small through hole from the top, not really big enough to get a quill up in there or whatever you call it. So anyway, it's working really pretty decent. I think we should be able to do all of our engine mounts like this. It's just a matter of figuring out how much we want to take off. We're going to start small. It's about 150 thousandths right there. Well, I spoke too soon about the little milling machine. Not sure what happened, but our end mill dropped down into the part and we gouged the crap out of this thing and made it way too small in one area. So I have the opportunity to remove material with the mill. I also have the opportunity to create material with the welder. So we ended up just throwing a couple passes in there, and we'll go ahead and remachine it, hopefully tighten everything up. I think what happened is our chuck actually kind of fell down out of the mill. I don't know, or maybe our workpiece came loose. I don't know. But I think we fixed our mistake because I didn't want to have to remake another one of those. All right, finally, we have the engine sitting in this thing, sort of lined up. I think we need to raise the front up a skosh, which is no big deal. We have some little shims to do that. Man, what a fiasco. What was supposed to be like Friday night's activity turned into all weekend. It's now Sunday afternoon. I'm cooked. This really frustrated me. I don't know why. I guess the intake must have changed location. I don't know what happened, but we've got the engine in place now. It's also a little bit lower, so we'll have more clearance on our hood, which is also good. Slightly lower center of gravity, blah, 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 whatever. Yeah, I'm hot. I'm tired. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Alrighty, well, we started into the exhaust, and I ran into a silly issue that I should have seen coming. It's going to require me to do some fabrication and decision-making, and I don't feel like doing either one of those right now. I want to hear an engine at least do something. So we moved on to hooking up the wiring, which was really not that hard. We ran our two positive leads down here to the, sorry, not two positive leads. We ran our positive, geez, Pete. We ran our positive and negative lead down to our battery, and I accidentally hooked them up backwards to start, so, you know. Yeah, anyway, so we blew the fuse, so I just replaced the fuse, and hopefully we have this blocked out, so hopefully the original, we just clipped the original starter button kill switch combo on to temporarily see what'll happen. Yeah! I don't know why I was so excited about that. Yeah, I mean, it should crank over. Let's do it again. Yeah, all right. Well, I'm glad to see that the pump isn't like bound up or something. Wow, that's the first time this thing's ever made any kind of noise. Isn't that crazy? Let's do it one more time. Yeah, that thing sounds like it wants to run too. All right, that battery I ordered almost a year ago and never used it because it was the wrong size, and it seems like it's got a great charge, so that's awesome. I really should not run it without the bread box on it, so let's go ahead and talk about what happened there. So our big old bread box here has been a kind of a constant piece of despair in this project. It's really spent like $200 on this. It's actually going to make me lose horsepower, but it was a little bit better packaging than the original bread box dealio. But since we had to shift our engine mounts around to get our pump alignment all dialed in, we ran out of space, which means we need to trim this, which means we need to move our seats forward. Just not really something I wanted to do. I thought we were past this. I already did a bunch of work to make this thing fit, so not the end of the world, just sort of frustrating. I thought we were good. So I guess there's really nothing to it but to do it. We're going to cut a hole there, and we'll have to bump the driver's seat forward an inch or two, and then maybe we'll make some smoke. Well, I had to commit an atrocity to do it, but we got our bread box in there. Ugh. I spent a lot of time making sure I wouldn't have to do that, and a few motor adjustments later, and we had to do it. Whatever, not the end of the world. Bread box is on. Our little water box thing down here is kind of half on, and that should be good enough to see if this thing will fire up. But first, we need fuel. All right, well, there are a few things on this build that I'm nervous for. Two big ones: the jet intake not working, and this tank leaking or just having issues. I've never built a fuel cell from scratch, and building one for a jet ski or a boat is probably not a great first place to start, honestly. But we'll see how it goes. There's really no turning back now. Any weld repair or anything we got to do to this tank is going to be a lot harder once it has fuel in it. But sometimes there's nothing to it but to do it. I don't see any trail of tears yet. All right, I'll set you up here so you can see if we get any fuel into this filter. Not really quite sure. I don't remember how the selector switch functions. I think if we go over here, that's going to be on reserve, and we're definitely going to need reserve. Don't the carburetors kind of look like baby birds waiting for a worm? They're about to get their liquid worm, hopefully. All right, let's see what happens when we crank it up. Okay, let's try this direction. All right, let's try this again. You know, that sounded like it was trying to run away. Would you agree? Wow, that's a lot of smoke too. Woo! I don't really like how high that was revving. Did it seize up? No? Okay, that's good. That is a lot of smoke. Sometimes I'm a meathead, and this was one of those occasions. Let me show you why. So, Exhibit A are carburetors. I could not get these things to pull fuel for anything. I tried new hose clamps, thinking maybe that the pinched clamps were letting some air through and we couldn't get any fuel. I bypassed all of our fuel switch, selector switch, went directly into the tank. I tried feeding out of another tank. I tried for cranking a lot with my hand over the carburetors to draw fuel, and I could not get fuel at all into these carburetors. Like nothing. I couldn't see anything going on. So I finally pulled the carburetors back off, which I should have done 2 days ago, and I realized my big dumb butt had the pulse, because this receives a pulse out of the crank case for your pump. I had my pulse and my feed line swapped, and even when I pulled the carburetors apart, it took me a few minutes too long to realize that the pulse, like cavity behind this clear piece of plastic was full of fuel, and I couldn't figure out why. And then finally it dawned on me. So I just cranked on it for like a second and it pulled fuel right away. A lot of wasted time to learn a stupid lesson. And I was paying attention when I hooked up the lines. You can't see the side of the carburetor where it tells you what line goes where, so I thought I knew and I didn't. Anyway, let's try and fire it up now. What a pain in the butt. Kill switch works too, that's good. Sweet. Freaking thing runs for the first time ever. I'm not as excited as I would have been 3 days ago when I first started this, but I'm still really pumped. Alrighty, now that this little booger runs, it's really been a barrage of little things to get done. So I went ahead and made a list. We're checking it twice. So I got our fuel lines all hooked up to our reserve system. This is off the original boat, or the jet ski fuel valve. It's got two pickups, regular and reserve. We built a little bracket off the side of our tank, so we're all dialed in there. Hooked up a grease fitting for our pump, so that's easy to grease remotely. What else did we do? I had to check some of the UHMW bolts on the bottom, make sure they were all tight. Put the air filter back on it. Mounted our choke, which I'm kind of happy with. Kind of in a weird spot, but our cable was only so long, and I wanted it somewhere in the passenger compartment, so that kind of made sense. What else did we do? I feel like we did a bunch of other stuff. Oh yeah, we welded the windshield in. Not all the way. I don't know if you're really supposed to or not. We'll figure that out. I would assume you always kind of want it sealed up in case you're hitting a bunch of water. It doesn't flow under here. This kind of protects your center section, but I don't know. And the last thing we just finished up was we put 2 tow points on the rear. In an earlier episode, we put the single tow point on the front, but I wanted 2 on the rear for several reasons. In case we need to tow a tugboat up the Mississippi River, so I can crane it with my auto crane onto the back of my truck. We have 3 lifting points now. And maybe, just maybe, I don't think this thing will have the nuts to do it, but there's always the opportunity to put a 2 behind this thing if we built like a bridle and a single line. It would be really tough. I think you could do it, but legally you have to have 2 people in the boat while you're towing somebody. You have to have a driver and a spotter, so that would make it really tough. 2 people in here and trying to pull someone. I don't think we can do it. So anyway, the next thing we need to move on to is we need to finish up our Stomp Grate. So it's all mounted down here on the bottom. The grate itself's done. We just need the stomp part. So we got to build some little ears to go off of this bracket here, and then we're gonna have a piece of all thread with a spring. The spring will hold the grate up, and all thread will go connect down to this guy. So when you pound down on it, this thing drops down a little bit and kicks out your seaweed, fish, whatever else you eat with your intake grate. So let's head over to the plasma and cut out some parts to do that. Well, I completely forgot to show you guys the plasma cutting, but we did get these little pieces cut out. So we're gonna go ahead and get them welded up on here. And yet again, I'm gonna complain about aluminum not being magnetic, so I have to hold this. There's really no good way to clamp this guy either. This is a little bit of a ledge here on the side of this aluminum. Forgot to turn the welder on. News! Come on, do the thing. Thank you. All right, so now that the tabs are welded on here, I can show you, as I plow into the tripod, what a professional photographer I am, videographer, whatever. Anyway, now that we have our tabs welded on, I can show you how this thing's supposed to operate. So we have our tabs welded to our Stomp Grate here, which is just the grate that prevents things from getting sucked up. I think I explained that earlier. Anyway, if debris gets stuck in there, the idea is you press down on this thing, which we're going to have a flat plate here, so you can reach back with your big size 12 foot, stomp here. That's going to press these springs, send this thing down. When the engine is off, it should knock the stuff out of the way, float away down the river, and then the springs will return this back up to where it's supposed to sit. So looks like our travel's good. I don't want to try it any harder than this because I have it all only tacked right now. I don't want anything to fall apart. But concept-wise, I think we're looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and maybe actually weld some of this together. All right, so kind of the next or last really major part of the Stomp Grate here is this guy right here, our handle. Now it's really tough by hand at this position, but I think if you're standing on the back of it, you should be able to, I mean, I can get it to go down, it just takes some effort. But we could always get some looser springs. That's probably easier than finding tighter springs. I'm not sold on how this looks. I also need to do some adjusting so it's perfectly flat, but this was definitely the simplest, quickest option. We can always get crazy down the road. This would be an easy thing to change, but it should work. I just got to figure out how to attach it so it doesn't come flying off when we're hitting Mach speeds. Original plan was just to drill through this, and then I remembered this is stainless steel all thread, so really tough to drill, not a lot of fun. The super simple option would be to thread a zip tie in there and just kind of wrap the zip tie around there, tighten it up, and then this thing can't fly off. But I was planning on capping this just to make it look a little better, but I don't know. Maybe we'll do that for now, because like I said, I'm not sold on it anyway. But we're looking pretty good on the Stomp Grate. Definitely strong enough to keep it up, which is my main concern. So sweet. Another thing off the list. So with our Stomp Grate figured out, I moved right into building our trim handle. Got a little tricky with it on the plasma, but nothing crazy, and I'm quite happy with how it turned out. All right, so once we got our piece cut, building the trim was actually really simple. I kind of been putting this off for like 2 weeks, but we have our original cable holder drilled back here into the side of the boat. It's like a little flange in the interior. And then you saw me cut out this handle. We just put a hole in the bottom for a bolt to go through and a pivot point. It's gonna work pretty sweet, I think. So that is, so backs down, ups, forwards rooster. Sweet. Now I think I'm gonna go ahead and try and order like a big thumb screw from McMaster Carr and spin this around so the bolt's facing out, the threads are. That way we can kind of, if we find like I need more friction to hold this in place, we can do that on the boat. You know, we can kind of set the trim where we want it and then tighten it down so it stays. I don't know. Now, good little reminder, the bolt for our adjuster should have been backed off a little bit so it could spin, because I just blew apart that plastic piece, but hey, whatever. Anyway, I did want to remind you guys, I could have spent like $500 and gotten a trim control, complete like machine setup with billet levers and everything. Would have been pretty sweet, but probably legitimately would have took me just as long to install it as it did to make my own from scratch. So I am beginning to understand why these boats are so expensive when people just throw money at stuff like that instead of, you know, building it on your own, which there's nothing wrong with throwing money at nice products. I'm sure a real trim control setup would work a lot nicer than my homemade setup, but we're doing this all on a budget. All right, so with the trim finished up, that was our last major project other than some tidying up I did of coolant lines and etc. things. But the last big hurdle we had to go through was we needed to get this thing registered. So you'll see there, I've got a tag welded on. That's my HIN number. And I have my registration sticker for the state of Iowa, which is where I live. And that was actually really easy. I was really nervous about that process, but it was pretty easy in Iowa. I had a DNR officer come out. He filled out an affidavit form for me that said this boat is homemade. And then I was able to take that to the courthouse, pay some fees, pay my registration, and walked out of there with registration, a title, and most importantly, an HIN number, which is like your whole VIN number, basically. So that's what's welded on there. So this thing is officially, legally licensed in the state of Iowa, and I'm excited. So sadly, this video is getting pretty long, and we're going to cut it off here. I hate to be that guy that's going to make you wait till the next episode. But next week, we should have this thing in the water for its first ever test. That should be the next video after this one, I hope, as long as everything goes well. So thank you guys for watching. There's still a lot of stuff I want to do this thing over time. I want to put the hood on it, maybe a sound system. I'm sure we're going to find a bunch of issues when we test it that I'll need to fix, but it's done. 8 months of work. This project was tough, to say the least, but I still need to add up how much we have into this. I think I did finish it out for under $5,000, not counting my time, of course. And you'll see down here, I'll put it on the screen, how much I actually had into this thing, but I should be under 5, I believe. I'm pretty pumped to have a little 7-foot, 85 horsepower jet boat for under 5K, brand new. Motor's not brand new, but boat itself's brand new. So thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. And I will see you guys on the next one where we have this little guy in water finally.